works fine, but it's that third time we're really...
Well, it's nice to meet you.
Likewise.
Thank you so much for giving this time to us. I appreciate it.
I appreciate your understanding. This is, now flying from Israel into Turkey is not, it gets problematic. So
yeah, and I'm quite concerned. I actually don't know. I haven't had time to pray about this, obviously. Did you hear what Trump said yesterday regarding the Gaza Strip?
Yeah, I did. And I just got done recording today's update for Skywatch TV on that because my first reaction was, this can't be real. This is somebody took an AI voice and, okay, he really did say that. But then after I thought about it for a bit, I thought, okay, this is Donald Trump doing what Donald Trump does. He's a businessman. And what he'll do, and he does this again and again, he puts out a position that is way beyond what he hopes to accomplish. Like when he said, okay, Canada, Mexico, 25% tariffs starting this weekend. And suddenly Canada and Mexico have troops on the border. It's like, okay, well, we'll pause the tariffs for a month and then we'll see what happens. So I don't think he really wants to occupy and own the Gaza Strip. I think what he's doing is throwing everybody off balance. In a way, it's like Solomon, and believe me, I don't think Donald Trump is as wise as Solomon. Although Solomon, I mean, come on, high place to Molech on the Mount of Olives. Come on, Solomon, what were you thinking? But it's like when Solomon said, okay, let's cut the baby in half. And I don't think he really wanted to cut the baby in half. What he wanted to do is get the two women and their supporters to stop fighting long enough to say, and then figure out an actual solution.
Yeah, he triggered a reaction.
He did. And so now you've got the Arab nations saying, he's just crazy enough, he might just do this. We better do something. And so Jordan and Egypt and Saudi Arabia are suddenly now saying, okay, this guy's just crazy enough, he might do this. So we better figure out how to come to an actual solution. Because if they keep trying to do the things the way they've been doing it, I mean, Israel tried. I know you've got people on the left saying he's ethnic cleansing, people on the right saying he's the Antichrist. This is the strong covenant with many for a week. Okay, it doesn't say strong covenant with Israel, it says strong covenant with many. I think a lot of prophecy teachers assume that it means Israel, but setting that aside, Trump is too old and he's too divisive to be the Antichrist. The Antichrist is going to lead the world against Israel. He's going to rally the whole world against Israel, and Trump's not that popular with so many on the left. So that just forget that idea. But what he's done, though, is he's got people back on their heels. Like, I mean, Israel tried ethnically cleansing Gaza when they pulled their people out of Gaza in 2004 when I forget when it was that Ariel Sharon withdrew from Gaza. Anyway, and then immediately Hamas killed all of the Fatah representatives and took over the Gaza Strip and turned it from what it could be. And this is what Trump is talking about. I mean, Gaza's got a climate that's like San Diego. And they've got these beautiful beaches. It could be like Monaco. It could be like the Riviera. But instead, they turned it into an armed camp. They dug up their own water pipes so they could make rocket launchers out of the pipe. So, if you're going to keep... And I've done enough reading of Islamic history to read and see that they've got 1,400-year history of trying to conquer anybody who won't submit to Muhammad and Allah, the teachings of Muhammad. If they won't stop this for now, I mean, the only message that the Arab mind, and I know this because I was married to a woman who is half Lebanese, and her father, who is Lebanese, Arab, told me this. He said, look, the only thing that we really understand is force. So, and the Turks are the same way, and so are the Persians. It's that mindset in the middle. It's not unique to the Arabs. The only thing that works over there is superior force. They and under Islam, where they've got the principle of taqiyya, meaning they can just lie to you as long as it's in the service of Islam, and another one called tawira, which is they don't exactly lie. They just don't tell the whole truth. For example, somebody can say, you ask somebody for a loan. Okay, I need a few bucks to get me over until payday, and the guy responds, I don't have $1 in my pocket. Hey, he's got a $50 bill, but he doesn't have a single dollar bill. So he's not exactly lying. He's just not telling you the truth because he doesn't want to. So those principles are embedded in the religion of Islam.
Wow.
And when you look at that and you look at the 1,400-year history of that nation, of that religion, rather, and we just assume that Syria and Iraq and Jordan, Egypt have always been Arab. And they have not. They only became Arab after Islam came out in the year 732 or 632 after Muhammad died, and began conquering everything under the sun.
Wow.
So it sounds to us in the West, it sounds bigoted. I would almost say racist, but that's not really accurate. It sounds closed-minded. But when you start reading the history and read what Muslim historians themselves write about their religion and about their right to conquer others. I mean, America's first war was against Muslims in the late 18th century. The Barbary pirates. Oh, they were just pirates. No, it was the government of Tunisia at the time, actually. They were taking American ships and enslaving American sailors. And when Thomas Jefferson and John Adams in London met with the ambassador, I said, why are you doing this? I said, well, our prophet says this is what we're supposed to do.
Wow.
Because you're not Muslim, so we get to take you and make you our slaves. There's a scholar at Ohio State University wrote a book some years ago and calculated that between the time of Henry VIII in England, so the early 16th century, okay, 1520s, 1530s, and the time of George III, who was the King of England during the American Revolution. So that 250-year period from Henry VIII to George III, about 1 million Europeans were enslaved by Muslims. 1 million Europeans were taken into slavery by Muslims.
Wow. Wow.
And this is history that we're not taught because, it's racist, it's bigoted, it's misogynist, it's whatever. But it's true. There are some scholars who think that the reason the Scandinavians began Viking, the reason for the Vikings beginning to raid the rest of Europe and carry the English and the Irish and the Scots and the French off into slavery was because there was a demand for European slaves in the Muslim slave markets in the Middle East. And the Vikings were just filling a demand.
That's incredible.
So, yeah, I know. And again, it sounds racist. I don't talk about this very often, but it's in my book, Bad Moon Rising, and I cite the sources. So, scholars who've researched this show that this is a thing. And I know it's uncomfortable for Westerners to think this way because we're so de-supernaturalized up here. We just can't conceive of people taking their religion so seriously that they would actually do this to other people. But
that they do. They take it very seriously.
Well, yeah, and this is why Hamas has done what it's done in Palestinian Islamic Jihad and the Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine and Hezbollah, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
But I like what you said about liking what Trump did to what Solomon did. Maybe he's just casting a net to see what happens. That makes me feel better, actually, because I couldn't say anything about what I heard yesterday. I just couldn't comprehend where he's coming from. And I'm saying, what's that going to do to the Arab nations?
Right. And what it's done is it's got them to, step back and say, whoa.
This guy's crazy. He'll do anything. Crazy.
He may be serious about this.
Yeah.
So, I know Mohammed bin Salman has said there'll be no normalization with Israel without a two-state solution. But privately, he's on record as saying, I don't really care about the Palestinian Arabs, but my people do. So I have to publicly say that I do. Here's the other thing. Trump made that statement. When Netanyahu visited Trump yesterday, he brought with him that 43-minute raw video of what happened on October 7th of 2023. Mm-hmm. So Trump had just watched that video shortly before they had that press conference. So Trump went into that after watching 43 minutes of people being murdered, raped,
It
shot.
was horrific.
It was. I've watched clips of it. I couldn't watch the whole thing.
I know.
So, but we visited Israel in May of last year, May 2024, and so we were there. 7 months after the fact, and
How
saw.
did it feel? Was it like stressful or like you were on guard the whole time?
Well, we were aware that things were going on, but most of the places that we visited, even when we were in the South, we visited some of the communities that were attacked on October 7th. Sderot, Ofakim. We visited the site of that Nova Music Festival where,
Did you really?
yeah, a couple hundred people were killed and about 120 others were taken hostage. And I'll tell you, Marcia, when you're driving in there, you're driving in on the road and you see that the road still has the scorch marks on it from the cars that had been burned.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, and so we're driving in on this van. It was only 9 of us. It was just 9 people, including Sharon and me, 10 with our guide. And as you're driving in, you're seeing the scorch marks and thinking people died there. And, they were just there for a party. Yeah, I mean, it was a trance music festival intended to induce an altered state of consciousness. And you could make hay of that, I suppose. But
Yeah.
they didn't go there thinking that they were going to wind up dead or enslaved, before the day was out. I mean, it was horrific.
I
It's
agree.
been turned into a pilgrimage site. There were a lot of people there. We saw some IDF soldiers who were there visiting. I went to a tent there. There was a young man who was from an ultra-Orthodox, well, not ultra-Orthodox, an Orthodox community in the north, along the border with Lebanon, where they had been removed from their communities because they were too close to the rockets that Hezbollah was shooting into Israel at the time. And he was copying a Torah scroll, and he was in the book of Genesis at that point. And people could go, and they were using this as an opportunity to raise money for ministering to people who'd been displaced. So you could go make a donation, and then he would put your hand on his hand while he was then copying the Hebrew characters.
Oh,
And it
wow.
was the passage of Genesis where Abraham sends Eleazar, his servant, to his former land in southern Turkey near the town of Haran to find a bride for Isaac. And it was, okay, look, I'm Christian, I understand, but our faith is based on what God revealed to the Hebrew prophets.
Yeah. That's our
So
womb.
there's, yeah. So was there anything, magical, mystical about it? No, but I thought, okay, but this is doing something concrete. It's helping them to raise funds to do something for the people who've been kicked out of their homes by this war. And we got done, and he said something in Hebrew, and I don't understand. And our guide, actually, Eddie Lipkin of Lipkin Tours was there with us that day. She said, he said you are a righteous Gentile. So I will take that as high praise. So,
Oh, yeah.
but we visited the town of Sderot where some 70 people were killed that day. The police station was overrun.
I
It
remember
was
that.
Yeah. There was a siege there at Sderot. They've
I
leveled the
remember.
building now, and they're going to turn it into a memorial. And they told us the story of how it had happened, where they finally just brought in a tank, an IDF tank, because the terrorists had broken in, and Hamas had 7 or 8 gunmen who'd taken over the police station and killed everyone inside. And they just brought in a tank, and they just brought the building down on top of them. Just said, that's it. We're just, okay. Yes, it's our local police station. Don't care. And they destroyed the building. But while they were trying to figure out how to resolve the situation, local police were trying to fight their way back into the police station in the hopes that maybe they could rescue somebody inside. And a Hamas sniper had gotten up on top of a building. There were apartment buildings across the street. I mean, this was in a neighborhood. Okay, you wouldn't think you're in a civilian neighborhood and suddenly it's a war zone. And there was a sniper on top of the roof of the police station across the street. And an off-duty IDF soldier realized the only way to allow, and he'd shot several of the police officers trying to rescue those who were still inside the police station. This soldier realized they would have to take out the sniper on the roof. And he found another soldier and he said, "Give me your weapon." And the soldier said, "Well, I can't. It's against regulations." So we're not quite sure how this soldier convinced the other soldier to give up his rifle. If it was he persuaded him or if he just said, "Here, look over there." Pow. Don't know. But anyway, he got the weapon. He got inside the neighboring apartment building and went into an apartment, told the people there what he was trying to do, went into their bathroom.
Oh my goodness.
Kicked out the screen, leaned out the window, and using a rifle without a scope, a very difficult shot, he was able to neutralize the sniper. And now there's a mural on the wall of that building showing an angel leaning out of that window.
Oh, wow.
With a bow and arrow. And it's just extremely powerful when you go there and realize, I mean, these are real people who didn't have any idea when they got up in the morning of October 7th.
Oh my goodness. You're going to make me cry.
We visited Enfoque. We'd heard the story of a woman named Rachel Edry. Because this came out very soon after the events of October 7th, that a woman had managed to stall terrorists who'd broken into her home long enough for her son, who was a police officer, to lead a rescue. And we didn't realize when we were in Ofakim that, oh wait, this is her home. Now, we didn't meet her, but we saw the home. You see bullet holes going up the side of the building, and the back of the building had been blown off by an RPG. But we met with some of the neighbors who told us the story. They showed us security camera footage from the front of over their front door. The family dog, small dog, had been out that morning. They'd let the dog out, and it had been outside when suddenly gunfire was erupting all over the community. And the dog was terrified. The dog was trying to get back in the front door, and the terrorists shot the dog. And then you could see them coming in and kicking in the front door. 5 of them came into her home. We heard the story from the neighbor, and this woman speaks Arabic. She's still alive. Her husband has since passed. She's in her late 60s. She ran a canteen at the local IDF base there in the Negev. And speaking Arabic, she started talking to these terrorists who'd broken in her home at 6:30 in the morning or thereabouts, and said, "You boys look hungry. Would you like something to eat?" And they were, okay. And so she started cooking and baking. "Would you like some coffee? How about some warm milk? And so basically she starts feeding these guys and stalling them. She baked cookies for them just to keep them there and keep them occupied. She kept them there for, how long was it? Like 18 hours, if I remember the story correctly. It was a huge amount. The guys were taking a nap. They had fallen asleep. And
that's amazing.
Her son, meanwhile, rounds up an anti-terrorist unit from the IDF, realizing that, his parents' home was now occupied. She sees her son out the window without giving him away. She signals him through the window. 5. There are 5 of them inside. And so the son gives the anti-terror unit the layout of the home. You go in through the front door, make a right, go up the stairs. That's where the kitchen is. They go inside and neutralize the terrorists. And realizing that she had, by keeping these guys occupied, by feeding these terrorists, how many of the neighbors that we met that day, last May, had she saved? We don't know. Because if she had not kept them there, they would have been going through the community, shooting, kicking down doors, killing any. It was astonishing what we saw.
It was miraculous, I guess, that the Lord would give her the wisdom and the strength. I would have been shaking like a leaf.
Well, no question. I mean, she clearly was afraid. Anybody who wasn't afraid in that situation would have been um, foolish.
Wow.
But yeah, there are murals of Rachel Edry on walls now in Tel Aviv and Haifa and Jerusalem. She's a national hero.
Oh, wow.
Joe Biden met with her, the former foreign secretary of the UK, met with her. Yeah, it's remarkable. Her story is just incredible. So
Wow.
again, we had no idea when we went there, and we met with again people in the community who told us their stories, and you could see again the scars on the buildings, bullet holes, and
Sure.
walls that were blown out from explosives. So this is what Israel has been dealing with. We went to in Sderot. We went to a playground, and we saw on the playground what looked like a long caterpillar. Probably I don't know 75, 80 feet long, made of concrete. It, bright green with a big smiling face, and places on the side where the kids can go inside the caterpillar. They said, now you realize why this is made of 6-inch thick concrete, right?
Wow.
No, because it's a bomb shelter. Because when the sirens go off, the kids have about 15 seconds to get into the shelter before the rockets from Gaza hit. Because Sderot, at its closest point, is less than half a mile from the border fence with Gaza.
Wow.
And we looked into Gaza when we were at an overlook there in Sderot. We could look down into the Gaza Strip, and we could hear Israeli artillery in the distance. This is when they were going into Rafah to take that border crossing. Yeah, we could see shrapnel holes, shrapnel marks in the concrete of this giant, friendly-looking caterpillar, and realizing that children in those communities in the Negev, not just Sderot, but other ones, their playground equipment has to be built to withstand mortar and rocket fire. I mean, who lives like it? Here in the United States, we don't have any clue as to what this is like. I mean, and there are many places in the world that are very violent. I mean, even some of our major cities are more violent than we here in the Ozarks are. In most of us in rural America don't have any clue. I mean, I grew up on the north side of Chicago, so I have a little bit of familiarity with it. It's why here in we've got the Mayberry of the Ozarks is what we refer to the town where we work. There are people run into the post office to do their or run into the bank, and they leave the car outside running. Like, I'm from Chicago. You get out of the car, you lock it, even though you're going 30 feet into the post office, and you're going to be right back. Here in the Ozarks, that's just how folks live. That's because you don't have to worry about that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But in Israel, it's not that way. And again, many places of the world are like that as well.
Yeah, I was talking to my husband about that. We haven't been to Israel since 2019. That was the last time we visited.
Right.
And then the pandemic hit. Obviously, we were not going to go. We normally take a group of people from the church. Our church is in Miami. Mm-hmm. We just, my heart aches. I want to go to Israel, but I don't feel comfortable taking people there at this point. I think it would be nerve-wracking for us being responsible for a group of people. We have a friend of ours who's part of the Tikkun ministry. I don't know if you know who they are.
Yeah.
They're actually moving their headquarters to Jerusalem next month, I believe. And he's coming in April, and I guess we'll talk to him and see what he thinks about us going, but by ourselves. 'Cause I don't know that Israel is ready for tourism.
We are planning to go back in October. We've got a tour scheduled for October, and we've got about 20 people who have signed up to go with us at this point.
Really?
So it may be a smaller group than we've had in the past. When we were there in 18 and 19, and then again in 23, we had between 80 and 120 people each time.
So that's two buses.
Yeah. We actually had 3 in 23.
Wow.
But we had empty seats on each bus, which is kind of nice because then you got room for a cooler with the bottled water and all that.
Yeah.
This time may be just one bus, and that's fine. That's fine. I heard from our friend Mando Gonzalez at Prophecy Watchers just Monday, that Israel has now reopened the north to tourism. So the sites in the north that we want to visit, like Tel Dan and Caesarea Philippi, or Banyas, the Grotto of Pan. That's now open to tourists again.
Wow,
We
that's
also plan
good.
to go on. Yeah, yeah. So it appears that the ceasefire is holding with Hezbollah. But again, it required Israel taking out the leadership of Hezbollah through violence. And of course, the world was saying, no, 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 don't do this. The Biden administration saying you must be measured in your response after October 7th, as if the United States would have been measured. If somebody had come across our border, and I think percentage wise, I figured out roughly it would be like 300,000 Americans being killed in a single day. My math is probably off on that, but in terms of the percentage of our population that Israel lost
Right.
on October 7th, it would be something like 300,000 Americans being killed in a single morning. And I just don't see the United States being. Oh, I mean, you look at what happened after 9/11. We've still got troops in Iraq and Syria,
That's
and
right.
so I just think it's hypocritical for us to have insisted on that with Israel, especially again in that part of the world. Sadly, the only message that really resonates is not one of peace, negotiation. Let's try to settle things
No.
peaceably. It's you basically make it clear that it's in the best interest of the other party that they leave you alone. Otherwise, there will be very serious consequences. I think this is why Donald Trump made the statement that he did about Iran the other day,
I know.
where he basically said, if Iran tries to take me out, they'll be annihilated. I mean, that sounds like big talk. It sounds like a guy, like an alpha male who's bragging. But I'm sorry, that is the way you communicate in that part of the world. And
But he has proven to everyone within weeks of taking office that he means what he says. When he speaks, he's willing to carry out whatever he has said. And that, I think that's shocking to most people because we're so used to being lied to, right?
I think it is. And I think that, without getting too political, but I think you're right. We are so used to politicians saying what they think we want to hear and then just not doing.
Exactly.
How many years can we go along thinking that they're just totally incompetent? I mean, as if people rise to run the government of the wealthiest nation on earth by being totally incompetent. No, it's just they're saying what we want to hear and then they're doing what they want to do. Trump is doing something else. And
exactly.
I think the Democrats really shot themselves in the foot by winding up in control of the White House in 2020. However that happened. Because they gave Donald Trump 4 years to plan his return, to vet people for his staff, to help implement his policies. And so they've hit the ground running, and I think the deep state doesn't know how to react. Now, will Trump be a good president? I don't know, but that'll be for historians to decide. But I think what we're seeing is out of the box thinking and a change of direction that if the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and hoping for a different result, then why are we so shocked when somebody comes in and says, oh, okay, let's try something different? No, you can't do that. Well, the other thing isn't working, and we keep doing it, and it's not working. Or the other thing that you're doing that isn't working, it's because you don't want it to work. It's because you're actually doing something else. You're lying to us about what you're trying to accomplish.
Exactly. So, that's how I think. I think everything that went on was intentional.
Yeah.
It was their agenda. They covered it up. They lied as best they could. But I think Obama was very effective in what he set out to do. I remember his slogan, change is coming. Yay! Mm-hmm. But nobody bothered to ask what kind of change.
Right.
And change he brought. This man was effective maliciously.
He did.
But boy, did he. Wow.
We should have seen early on when he and Senator McCain both interrupted their presidential campaigns in the the fall of 2008, which was when we had the subprime mortgage collapse.
I remember.
The economy was going into the tank, and both of them interrupted their campaigns. We thought, okay, well, this is a good thing. They're putting the needs of the American people first ahead of their political ambitions, and then they both voted to bail out the big bankers. Like, okay, that should have been the clue.
Who can forget that?
They're all on the same team. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, it is. Politics. It's very easy to get caught up in the politics and forget that as Christians, our mission is not to promote a particular political agenda, because politics is how our lives are governed, and the government has a lot of influence over how our children are raised, especially if we have grandchildren in public schools. But ultimately, regardless of who's sitting in the White House, our charge from our commander-in-chief, Jesus Christ, is still the same, which is to make disciples of all nations. And nations doesn't mean geopolitical entities. The word there is ethnos, meaning all ethnicities.
Correct.
So, we need to reach out to everybody, regardless of their skin color or the language or what have you.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think we just recorded a podcast. What an interesting conversation. My son was telling me yesterday, he's one of our preachers here at church, and he was just talking to me about everything that's going on yesterday. He goes, I'm trying to follow up. You know who Derek Gilbert is, Mom? And I'm like, maybe. Why? He's studying with all your podcasts to then preach. And I was like,
you don't have a son old enough to preach. Come on.
Yes, I do.
My goodness.
I'm 25, but yes, I have a son that preaches. But I was like, I have a podcast with him tomorrow. He goes, you're kidding me. And I'm like, no. I also interviewed Rick Renner.
Wonderful.
Oh, that was fantastic.
We really enjoyed meeting the Renner family. That was wonderful.
Yeah. Maybe, do you have the upcoming Israel trip posted on your social media or something, or your webpage?
We do. There's a link at our website, gilberthouse.org/travel, but there's a link in the top menu bar that says travel with us, and all the information is there. We partner with Lipkin Tours. This is Aaron and Etty, E-T-I, Etty Lipkin. Aaron is the son of Avi Lipkin, who's been, speaking and teaching at churches in the U.S. for many years. Avi was born and raised in New York, made Aliyah when he was 19, without telling his family he was going to do it.
Wow. Wow.
And he's been in Israel for 50 years now. But Aaron and Etty live in a small community in Samaria, which is what the world calls the West Bank. But Aaron is like us and loves archaeology. So in fact, they're putting on an archaeology conference in Israel in October. And so we need to get in touch with Aaron, find out, is that going to be while we're there? Because we'd like to bring our tour there, or if it's just before or just after, can we stay a few extra days? And he was a big supporter of the work and promoter of the work of the late archaeologist Adam Zertal. And Zertal is the one who found the site of Joshua's altar on Mount Ebal. He's also the one who found what is most likely the fortress of Sisera. Now, Sisera was the leader of the Canaanite military forces, defeated by Deborah and Barak. The one who got the tent peg through his head.
Yeah.
And so we've been to those places because
I haven't been there.
Aaron takes tours to places that other tours don't go. We've been to Gilgal Rephaim now 3 times, which is that megalithic site on the Golan Heights. We went a few days early, and with Aaron, we visited another site very similar to Gilgal Rephaim. That's less than half a mile from the site of ancient Bethsaida, which is from the city that where Jesus called his first 3 disciples, Philip, Andrew, and Peter.
Right.
And this location is on a bank about 75 feet above the Jordan River. So it overlooks the Jordan River. It's about 2 miles north of the Sea of Galilee. We think that's where Jesus got baptized.
Oh, my goodness.
And in fact, we write about that in our new book, The Gates of Hell, and explain why we think that's where Jesus was baptized. United Nations, everybody and their brother, including some archaeologist friends of ours who we respect, think it's down near Jericho. That's where the UN World Heritage Site is located,
Right.
UNESCO site.
Yeah.
But the Gospel of John, in chapter 1 of the Gospel of John, makes it clear that John was baptizing at Bethany across the Jordan. Well, you read that he's confronted by the Levites and the priests from Jerusalem who are there to ask John the Baptist, why are you baptizing? In whose authority are you baptizing? This baptism of repentance for the forgiveness of sins. That was a totally new doctrine, which, by the way, comes out of the book of First Enoch, but that's a whole nother talk. So Bethany across the Jordan. The next day, John the Apostle is very clear. The next day, John sees Jesus approaching, says, behold the Lamb of God who takes away the sin of the world. And then he says, John sees the dove descending on Jesus, which, okay, from the other Gospels, we know that's when Jesus gets baptized. Then continuing on, the next day again, John sees Jesus and says, behold the Lamb of God, and Andrew starts following him. And then he runs home to tell Peter, hey, we found the Christ, the Messiah. It's like, all right, we know from John that Bethsaida was the hometown of Peter and Andrew and Philip, who Jesus calls the next day. So we know from the other Gospels as well that Peter and Andrew, brothers, were partners in a fishing business with James and John, brothers,
Right.
on the Sea of Galilee. Now, the site near Jericho is 90 miles away. That is a really, really long walk. It would roughly take, scholarly estimate, about 40 to 45 hours of walking.
Okay. So that's a few days.
So it's a few days of walking at least. Probably 5 days of walking at least. And that's
Right.
full days, walking 8 hours in sandals across very rough terrain. What are the odds that Andrew is a disciple of John the Baptist near Jericho, and he runs home 90 miles within a day, same day, to tell Peter, hey, we found the Christ? No. A scholar with the Palestine Exploration Fund back in 1872 named Claude Conder wrote that the oldest Greek manuscripts of the Gospel of John said that the word translated Bethany is Bethania, which was a Greek transliteration of the Latin name Botania, which is Bashan. Bashan across the Jordan. That's north of the Sea of Galilee and across the Jordan, meaning east of the Sea of Galilee, the ancient kingdom of Og of Bashan. In other words, the Golan Heights, which is covered, by the way, with megalithic monuments to the cult of the dead, like Gilgal Rephaim and like this site overlooking the Jordan River. So
Wow.
that's why we think it, because again, this site overlooking the Jordan is half a mile from Bethsaida. And what better place? Jesus declaring war on the fallen realm at the Jordan River, right below a monument to the
There's
cult.
Michael Heiser for you.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yes,
anyway.
that makes sense. Geographically speaking,
yes,
it makes sense.
It is. We think so. In fact, our friend Doug Van Dorn, who was with us in Israel last year when we went there and spent a day with the archaeologist who's done the most recent excavations at Gilgal Rephaim,
Oh, that's
said
fascinating.
that, and said that Gilgal Rephaim was certainly devoted to a cult of the deceased ancestors. Now, it being an archaeologist and a scientist, he wasn't going to say, yeah, they were worshiping demons and they were hearing from the spirits of the dead. But that's what they were doing.
We understand, of course.
Yeah. And there are other sites like this. There was a paper just published last November that found, using satellite imagery, a number of other locations like this on the Golan Heights, megalithic structures that are concentric rings of stone around a central pile called a tumulus. Doug thinks that when you look at the Gospel of Luke and says that Jesus fed the 5,000 in the wilderness near Bethsaida, that the bank of the Jordan River slopes down from this site called Kerbet Betaha, which means ruins of Bethsaida. There's a slope about 75, 80 feet, which makes it a wonderful natural theater. People sitting on this slope while you've got somebody down there in the river who's preaching and baptizing. So we think that's where John baptized Jesus. We also think Jesus may have taken the 5,000 there and fed the 5,000. In fact, there is a petroglyph that was found at that site, Kerbet Betaha, by Dr. Mike Freakman, the archaeologist we spent the day with. That's in the shape of an ichthys, a fish.
Oh, my goodness.
Does that commemorate the fishes and the loaves? Don't know. There's no way to date it, but it is interesting
But
that it's
possible.
There. It's possible.
It's fascinating. So I'll look into the information for the trip in October. My husband and I were just talking about that this morning, how much we want to go back to Israel, but we're not ready to take a group just yet.
Yeah.
We're going to do Turkey first and see what happens.
Well, I think that would be wonderful. And we are familiar enough with the sites that we plan to see that I'm confident I can make it there. We've had some older folks there with mobility issues. We're okay. And, on those few places where it's really difficult, you can stay with the bus. Getting to Joshua's altar is a bit of a hike, and there's this kind of a steep hill. But they did have a Land Rover where, look, if you don't think you can make it up or down, we'll take you down, and then you can walk the rest of the way on level ground. So I think I'll be okay, even if the Lord, says this is your new reality. You're going to have to walk with your staff for. Okay, all right, I can, I can deal with that.
It's grace a new phase. It's different.
Yeah,
you adjust.
Absolutely.
But anyway, what matters is that you're able to go.
Yeah, because being there really is life-changing. And I'll tell you what, if you want to see, you probably have experienced this when you're there at Banyas, the Grotto of Pan, and you read that scripture from Matthew, on this rock, this 9,000-foot mountain behind me, that was basically the Canaanite version of Mount Olympus. It's where the gods are.
That's right.
On this rock, I'll build my church, and the gates of hell, which is this really big cave right over here, will not prevail against it. And 100 people all go, oh,
it's true.
it's a real place. Yeah, Jesus wasn't using metaphor. It's a real place. He went there specifically. And again, they had to walk there 30 miles from Capernaum. It's not like they were just in the neighborhood.
No, I'm going to call that a Donald Trump move.
Exactly.
I'm here, and this is what I'm saying to you.
Exactly. And then he climbs the mountain.
Yes.
According to the Gospel of Matthew, 6 days later, they climb the mountain and he's transfigured. So, yeah, it was definitely...
Right?
Yeah.
It should be the other way around. It's not a Donald Trump move. Let's call it a Jesus move, but it's like an in-your-face type of thing.
An in-your-face, right, exactly.
Yeah, right?
Here I am. What are you going to do about it?
Exactly. I want to see your reaction. Woo! That was awesome.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Sounds good. Thank you so much for your time. Say hello to your wife, please, and I will email you and we'll reschedule
Sounds wonderful.
Another time. Thank you so much. God bless you, Derek.
God bless you, Marcia. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye.